Hey, what's up guys? Chad and Bailey in here with the Reptile Rangers. Now we're at the Kernersville Reptile Zoo and Medical Center again today, and we're going to talk about using natural items from the wild in your habitat. Goods and bads to both. There's actually not that many bads to them. However, mostly good, but we're going to talk about a bunch of different things that you can do, and it's free. Okay? The key thing is free. Not everything you put inside of a habitat has to be something that you bought from a store or just because somebody said, oh, this is what's supposed to go into a habitat. All right, before we get into that, right here in this corner, in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see the Reptile Rangers YouTube subscriber watermark. Make sure to hit that. If you're on your cell phone, wind it up to the full screen, and you'll see it right down there in the bottom right-hand corner. We appreciate you doing that. And now that you've done that, let's get started. All right, so let's get started right out of the gate with there's goods and bads to both your store-bought stuff and both stuff that you would find in nature. However, when we start talking about decorating your habitat, most people start talking about or looking into things that they find attractive. That either goes, sometimes it goes with the habitat, sometimes it don't. You can have some people that like decorating their habitats, and it is absolutely the furthest thing from what they would live in naturally. Sometimes it's functional, sometimes it's not. But when we're talking about just trying to make it look like it would in the wild, using fake stuff versus using real stuff, is there any real bad ideas behind using real stuff? No, other than the fact stores will tell you, no, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that, you need to get this stuff. Well, that's because they're making money. They don't make money off you going and getting stuff for free. And so, but I couldn't care less whether they make money or not. So, yeah, hence the video. All right, now, so anyways, let's start off with just, you're building your habitat. Now, and again, bear in mind, I want to say this and be clear about this. This is not some massive exhibit, because you're not going to be able to do a lot of the things that I'm talking about in traditional style ways in which I'm talking about if you're talking big, massive log pieces and things like that. You have to do that a little bit differently. We're just talking about a standard in the home aquarium setup, some form of nice enclosure that's a standard size of a home, okay? All right, so in starting with going outside, okay, you are setting up your habitat, whether a desert or a tropical forested habitat, doesn't really matter because a lot of the same items apply in some form or another. You can use things like real rocks, you can use real sticks, even these, now, and I'll say this, yes, these are the store-bought, but it's real, it's natural. It's been treated, but we'll talk about how to treat things kind of like this if you do it yourself, and how to deal with it so that you don't have to deal with parasites. Now, let's talk about the advantages of some of your natural stuff, okay? First and foremost, manufactured or store-made items are not going to have the same texture that your real items, your natural items are going to have. They're just not. Okay, so you take some of the plastic fixtures, some of the hides, some of those trees. You have those nice fake plasticky trees that have the little green plastic pieces on them to represent your grassy overlooks in areas. In the trees, it's representing, of course, where the leaves and some of the tree is branching out. Now, with that being said, they make it bumpy, but bumpy is not coarse, okay? A lot of this is going to be coarse. Even with the bumpy plastic, it's still smooth bumpy. This right here actually has a gripping texture. Real has a gripping texture, like this right here. Your plastic, yes, is bumpy. It has texture to it, but it's not coarse texture, okay? So the first advantage that you have when it comes to using live natural stuff is, of course, it helps the lizards keep their nails trimmed down. Also helps them be able to catch a better grip. It allows them to be able to climb more places. Your snakes can shed better, so can your lizards. They can shed easier. Natural items tend to be better, okay? Now, granted, yes, the disadvantage to like a rock this size, it's going to be heavy. Obviously, that's going to be a disadvantage. We have some massive rocks in some of our glass enclosures. Here, you just have to be real careful about it, and you can't, of course, pick the glass enclosures up with the rocks and stuff inside of it. So there is a disadvantage that, yes, there's a lot of weight when it comes to stuff like this. Now, when we start talking about pulling other stuff from outside of the wild, but when we're talking about natural items, The great thing about these, they're easy to clean. Of course, so are the plastic ones. All right. Now, the advantage to the store-bought ones is, yes, they're plastic, so you can bleach them, you can clean them, you can soap and water them, you can, you can do whatever you want to do as far as that goes. Of course, they break easy. This does not. They don't break as easily as your store-bought stuff. And, of course, this was free versus your $15, $20, $30, $50, $60 piece that you buy from, whether online, in the store, or whatever the case may be. So there's the obvious added advantage of this. It's free. Now, when we start talking about trying to keep it parasite-free and keep any parasites from coming onto your animal, whether snake mites, lizard mite. All right, now another benefit to the natural stuff is a natural heat absorber, okay? Meaning, when you have your reptiles sitting in the wild, or they're in the wild, let's say in the forest, they're under a lot of leaf cover, or what we call canopy. It's jungle canopy. So when they find areas of sunlight, or sunlight's hitting rock, yes, it's heating up the atmosphere, but it's also heating up the surface of the rock too. Same thing for the desert. Of course, we know in the desert, it's just blaring, beating down on the rock all day long. So they can't really get on that at the hottest part of the day because it may burn them. That's the difference between heat pads and things like this. They don't have, and we use this our term all the time, they don't have heat pads in the wild. They have the sun. Sun heats up the atmosphere. The heat pad only heats the direct surface that it touches. In an enclosed, completely enclosed space, like in a rack system, yes, that heat can start heating up the whole tub, as it were. But inside of a habitat, something like even these habitats that we have here in the zoo, a heat pad don't do squat, okay? So that's hence the point of sunlight. Sunlight beats down onto the rock. So whenever the reptile, let's use a bearded dragon for example, he climbs up on the rock, he's sitting there basking, he's getting the heat on his back, but he's also getting the heat on his belly. Now understand, your plastic, fake stuff does not absorb heat well. It'll get hot really quick, but it also cools down really quick. Things like natural rocks absorb the heat and can produce heat for many, many hours after the fact, okay? So these animals, even closer to dusk, this is also another reason why we see in the wild, especially in the south, we see a lot of the snakes will come out after dark. Some of your lizards will come out after dark, and they're easy to find on the roadways because they're sitting on the roads staying warm. They're using the roads for warmth, but it's not beating and blistering in the heat of the day, okay? So now let's talk about how we deal with the natural stuff. How we deal with it, there's two different ways in which we can deal with these to basically do what's called purifying or cleaning them, decontaminating them for bugs, okay? First off, I'm going to have Bailey tell you exactly how we deal with it in my favorite way. It's the easiest way to deal with it. It's called cooking.
We bake them at 200 degrees for 2 hours.
Okay, so it's pretty simple. I mean, just that easy, okay? Just throw it standardly in your oven, 200 degrees, 2 hours, and you kill every parasite on the housing item to be, okay? However many you so choose to do. Now, you see where the complicated side of that comes in. Most people don't have ovens that's big enough for people to walk into. So when you're talking things like iguana pens or big, massive enclosures that take 6 foot, 7 foot, big round logs, things like that, that's not going to fit in the conventional oven. So what do? There's other ways in which you can deal with it. You can do things like fire hardening. You can do things like what's called bleaching. Of course, bleaching, you're going to have a big enough vat or container that the item can fit in. You have to fill it up with bleach. You have to let it soak in bleach for about 24 hours. Then you pour all the bleach out, and then you fill it up with water and let it soak in the water to start cleaning the bleach out of the item, primarily the wood. And then you drain that, and then you do water again for another 24 hours. So it's a 72-hour, basically 3-day process, where cooking is much, much simpler. There are chemicals on the market, things like Reptile and some of that other stuff that can kill some of your living parasites, but most of the mite spray that you find at stores is absolute garbage to begin with, okay? It doesn't kill the eggs, and it doesn't have a residual effect. It's only going to kill instantly what it touches. So there's several things in which you can do. Of course, with the plastic stuff, you don't really ever have to worry about that. Understand, mites lay their eggs in warm, moist areas. And so when you have warm, moist areas, which you're going to have a lot of the times, in your reptile habitat somewhere or another, unless it's a desert habitat, and even then it's still possible if they overflow the water dish or they get in and out of the water dish, make a mess, things like that, that's going to be warm, moist areas. So there's obviously areas and places where mites could lay eggs or set up a nest, essentially a nesting site to lay their eggs, okay, where they feel comfortable. So this is a way in which to deal with and be able to use natural housing items and keep things free. Now, am I knocking some of the stuff that you can buy? Absolutely not. But a lot of the times people want really, really big stuff, and of course, when you're talking something that's man-made, the bigger it is, the more expensive it is. Just go real. Yes, this is heavier, but it works a whole heck of a lot better because it naturally absorbs the heat, and it also has more of a coarse feel, which helps the animals in climbing, in gripping, in keeping the nails filed down, in sheds. It helps in a lot of different areas, okay? Now, again, yes, most of the time it is going to be a little bit heavier than the fake stuff that you're going to buy. But if you want to be able to use natural items inside of your house or your ecosystem, then this is exactly how you can deal with it, okay? This gives you the opportunity to be able to go out and use some pretty cool stuff that you can find in nature, because we do find that nature creates a lot of really awesome artwork, even when it comes to her natural products, okay? Like rocks and wood and things like that. So we find some really cool decorative pieces in the wild. And so a lot of people want to be able to put those in their habitat because they look really good. All right. Now, this is Chad. This is Balian. We are the Reptile Rangers here at the Kernersville Reptile Zoo and Medical Center. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, like button, hit the bell for notification. Make sure to follow along week after week after week, and feel free to leave a comment. Our information will be in the description below for those needing to get in touch with us. People are getting in touch with us all the time. You can also let us know of other things you want us to film about. We're happy to be able to bring as much education and fun, enjoyment of learning about different reptiles and amphibians and arachnids as we can. All right. Now, we appreciate you following along. We'll either see you here at the zoo or we'll see you on the next episode. Later.